Well, I have a story that is very much in line with what you're talking about that maybe I could take a couple minutes just to tell. I think I've told
Sure.
it to you before, but it might be worth, and it's a little far afield from the beginning topic of calming the nervous system, but I think it's maybe a good one. So, when I was coming up in Aikido, so I started training in Aikido when I was just a kid, and I had this wonderful teacher. She was a Japanese woman who was teaching Japanese at Smith College, and I grew up in Northampton, Massachusetts, where Smith is. And her all-time hero in Aikido was this master Chiba Sensei, and he was like this. So he was sort of this legendary figure. He was just like someone that you might see someday if you're lucky.
Right.
And and she was fantastic. She was about 4'6". She was a tiny little person, but she could just like do these amazing things. And she said, Chiba was her primary. So I sort of grew up with this idea that Chiba, like the way Chiba did it, that's the right way.
That's the right way.
Right. And then of course, I end up going and I trained with him for many years. And I learned the right way. And there wasn't this thing where you had various teachers like your experience that you're describing, where you sort of have this openness to different things. It was a way where you did it the way Sensei did it, period. And I was I was a true believer. I was really a true believer in that sense. Of course, all my life, I knew that Chiba had grown up with another Aikido master named Kanai Sensei, who taught out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Kanai Sensei was wonderful. I thought he was a fantastic Aikidoist. Couldn't have been more different style-wise from Chiba, right? And I was convinced that Chiba was the way. And then over the years, training with Chiba and sort of hearing the story, they came up together since like preschool, they were together. And at a certain point, I was like, oh, in Japan, everything's very rank oriented. And Kanai was like the number one boy in their class, and Chiba was the number two. Right. So Chiba came into the first day of preschool like, I'm going to be the head boy, but he wasn't, because Kanai was there. And when he tells the story, he's like, well, I didn't know Kanai would be there. Like,
Right.
So they're training in judo together for years, and they make a blood oath to always train in judo together. But then they find out about Aikido, and they're like, oh, forget judo. And they go to Aikido, and they're training in Aikido together for all these years. And it's Chiba and Kanai, and they're just like tight buddies all their lives. Of course, they have fallings out because they're dynamic people. And at a certain point when I was training with Chiba, I had been really convinced that his way of doing things was the way. And then towards the end of my time with him, he said, well, maybe now you're ready to train with Kanai. And I was just like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was doing the right way, and Kanai does it so differently. I just couldn't understand how could this be? And then a couple of years later, I was on the East Coast. All my training with Chiba was in California. I was on the East Coast, and I watched an Aikido demonstration that Kanai gave. And I think I've told you this story, but so I'm watching Kanai do this demonstration. There's 300 people on the mat. It's this big thing. And many masters were doing demonstrations that day. And I was sort of fresh off my training with Chiba. I was maybe like a 4th degree black belt or something at the time. And I wasn't even on the mat. I was standing up in this balcony watching down at these masters doing their things. And there were a lot of great demonstrations. And Kanai Sensei got up, and he said, his English wasn't as good as his English was fine, but he was kind of shy about it. He was a sort of shy and unassuming person in a funny way for someone who was so potent. And he said, some people do Aikido this way. And he proceeded to do a demonstration of Aikido where he did just absolutely to a T perfect Chiba Aikido. I was just, I was like, wait, what? I thought he didn't do it that way because I thought Chiba was the only one who could do it his way. And, he does perfect Chiba Aikido. And they say, and then some people do it this way. And he proceeds to do another master. He said, and some people do it. And he does these just impeccable, perfect versions. And he says, but I do it this way.
Right.
And then he shows his way of doing the technique. And I was just getting chills up and down my
Right.
spine watching this guy, this master that I had grown up sort of thinking he was like, maybe he was the second best, you know?
Mm.
And he just blew my mind and totally my whole idea of like doing things the right way. Now, there's something I think really useful about learning a very particular, like I think there is something very beneficial about spending a certain amount of time just like doing it a certain way, having a certain set of principles, following a certain set of rules, and really sort of training yourself on one way. But it's always only a way of getting to some place where you can throw the rules in the garbage.